to give you guys a tour. And then we're going to have Emerick, who might be on. Emerick, are you on the line right now?
Not as of yet. He hasn't. It's just selling.
Yeah, Emerick's going to get on in a few minutes. Emerick is our entrepreneur in residence who basically for the last 3 years ran the space and is going to tell you more about how we've used the generator and sort of like a foundation for where we're going with the project. And then we're going to have Jay Solly, who I think is getting on in a minute. Jay runs an organization called Sustainable United Neighborhoods. Actually, the sign is right behind me. And Jay is here in the building. He's been with us for about 1.5 years as our partner nonprofit, also doing a whole range of programming. So the goal really is to help you understand how we're using the building today. That's going to bring us to our plans for the future and what the project is supposed to do for the neighborhood. So I don't know if some of you might have been here in previous years. I'm standing right now, I'll show you around here, in a single-story warehouse. And I'm going to walk outside for a minute to show you from the outside. So the project consists of 4 existing buildings. Let me just open the door. Give me 1 second. So I'm standing outside on Moore Street, and I'm going to go across the street so you can see behind me. Mr. Codio, could you hear me? So now on the corner.
I can hear loud and clear.
Okay, so that's the beginning of the project from the corner all the way here. Now we're going to walk in a second. If you see the green scaffolding, I'm going to show you the interior courtyard, which some of you have seen in the renderings. And then behind me, you see the buildings continue. So there's a total of, right now, 4 buildings on the site. And when we finish with our rezoning, the 2 at the far end, the 2 shorter buildings, are going to be demolished to make way for the new building, which I'm going to show you in my rendering. So I'm going to go back inside now, and I'll show you here. We have some beautiful artwork identifying the building, the Bushwick generator. Hold on, I think I lost it. And we're going to go in now, and I'm going to show you the rest of the building inside. So the property today, and we can share some of those photos with the group. Property today had 2 existing tenants. One of them gave up their office with COVID. And this was the 3rd space that we are still occupied in. As you see around, what we did is we took an existing warehouse. You see the brick on the detail on the walls. The ceiling, which I'm showing you now, this was a single story. I think it's roughly 27 feet. So we put in a full 2nd floor. And you see here, there's a staircase, which we're going to go up in a second. But before we do that, I'm going to take you through the back door. And I'm going to show you. So what we started doing here is, you see there's framing. We basically put in existing finishes to let tenants come in and see a layout of a space. And because the original warehouse building was very deep, I'm walking you now into the center courtyard. So that's the green scaffolding that we showed you, the fence that we showed you from the opposite side of the street. And this is an interior courtyard that we built that opens up the property, because if these walls continue to be connected, it was extremely dark all the way to the back of the building. And now we made ourselves a fake streetscape, so we bought some old brick. Can you see, Mr. Codio, is it clear what's going on over here? It's the first time I've done a phone video.
I know, you're doing good so far. You're doing good so far.
And these, by the way, these are also cobblestones that we bought to try to create an effect of this beautiful street. So we have one building here that I think some of you have been in. And then it backs up to the hotel portion of the site. And then this is the 2nd building, where we've left it open now because we're talking to tenants who might want to take the whole building and possibly use it for something like TV and film production, where they would punch out. If you see what we did here, we put in another full 2nd floor, because like many warehouses in this neighborhood, originally these buildings were 1 full story with no 2nd floor. So you see here the steel, the structural steel. We put in a full 2nd floor, we poured the concrete, and then we stopped. So we're going to build it to suit for tenants. And in between these 2 buildings, you see the beginning of a bridge, which will be in some of the renderings we show you, that eventually is going to be enclosed. and you'll be able to walk between the two buildings. So I'm going to go back inside. Now, the other thing I'll show you before I go back in, actually, is we also pulled the back of the building forward. So this is outdoor space, and this alleyway takes you back to the Morgan Avenue train. It's like a block and a half away. So there are 4 ways to then enter the property in its current layout. And I'm going to take you now back into the space that we use for the generator, where Jay and his team currently inhabit, and we'll show you the second floor. I'm going to walk back in. Now, in the meantime, does anybody have any questions on what I showed you so far? Okay, so I'm going to continue. So here I'm back inside of the generator, and I'm walking here up these beautiful steps which we made, the steel and the wood. And we're coming up. So here in this space, we've run a lot of hackathons and other different groups for local high school kids and others in the community. And Jay is over there. Jay is going to wave. So we have desks set up here. This floor is brand new. So we poured this to separate out what was like a 27-foot ceiling height.
Toby, I believe Justin raised his hand.
Okay, Justin, what's the question?
Yes, hi. I'm not sure if this has been mentioned in the past, but could you explain real quick or just summarize what a hackathon is?
Yes, I'll explain it to you in a second. So basically what a hackathon is, and Emerick is going to do more justice to that than I, it just means that people get together. It includes individuals who know things about technology and those who don't, and they're proposed a problem, which they spend a certain number of hours hacking, which just means sort of thinking through ways to solve it. And we're going to talk more about that during the course of this class to really help you understand how we've used that as a tool to engage with the community and really turn the generator into a collaborative space for problem solving. So I'll come back to that in a minute, but I'm just going to show you here. In this corner, we've been running a local community art gallery and the programming that Jay will tell us more about. During the heat of the pandemic, Jay Solly and his organization led efforts in partnership with World Central Kitchen. We turned the space into a food distribution center, over 200,000 meals. And we've now started programming again, which Jay will tell you a little more about. So we're going to show you one more thing, and then we'll have Emerick and Jay speak. So this is the second floor. Again, we poured that full floor to break up the very tall warehouse ceiling. And this is what is going to be an enclosed bridge. So I'm standing now on the second floor. So, of course, below me is that walkway that we created. You see the cobblestones, and you see the streetscape. So the goal here is for this to be open to the community and to the neighborhood, and have tenants on both sides. But this is going to be fully enclosed with an elevator on this side of the building. The hotel side right behind me, right over there. So what I'm going to do is we're going to send around some renderings and some site maps so everybody can see what's going on without being here. And now I'm going to answer a few more questions, and then we're going to have Jay take over and tell you about the programming that's going on here. So I think that was William with the question.
Hi, yes. So I see that the building is still very much under construction. If you guys had to estimate, how long do you think that the rest of the building would take, and what kind of setbacks do you think you guys would have?
What was the second question? What kind of what?
What kind of setbacks do you think you guys would have?
Yeah. So there's 3 phases to this project. The first is completed, and those are the 2 spaces which we'll send you photos because we don't really go into them now. Tenants are a little more weary of guests. That was completed and leased up about 3 years ago. Then we have phase 2, which slowed down a little because of COVID, and that's the space that I'm sitting in and the one next door, where we completed our structural work. And there, the next phase is to find a tenant and then complete the fit out for them. If it would be an office tenant, it's going to look more like what I've shown you. If it's going to be somebody doing film production, we may break open the floor and turn it back into a 26-foot ceiling height space. So that, of course, all that activity stopped in March with COVID, and we hope over the next couple months that picks up again. And the third phase is, we'll show you once both Emerick and Jay finish their presentation, the layout of the overall site that we own. There's a section of it with land and the two smaller buildings I showed you that are going to be the footprint for the new building we plan to build once the rezoning is achieved, similar to what we did on 25 Kent. So now I saw another question about COVID. So the response there is that COVID obviously stopped everything, both with regard to our rezoning, where it's generally has been a process of meeting in person. So the city stopped all activity around rezoning until they figured out how to do it through digital meetings. Certainly on the tenancy side, one of our tenants was unable to keep paying the rent, so we allowed them to terminate their lease. A second, for months and months, they didn't come in. Now they started again at a reduced rent. And obviously, there's basically no new leasing going on in really anywhere, I think. Very limited leasing, and certainly not right now in Brooklyn for new commercial leasing. So everything's been a little bit on hold and now starting to open up again as things start to return slowly to normal. I saw there was another hand up.
Yeah.
I can go there.
She has a question.
Go after her. COVID, what was your final date? What would be your final date when you finish with the project? And after COVID, how long do you think will take the whole building or the whole plot of land to be completely finished?
So we were looking at from pre-COVID, let's say March. We thought we'd get certified on the rezoning in June or July. So it would have been, all the phases would have been done in about 3 years. Now we pretty much lost the year because, it's been almost a year since March. So, from the time things open up, it's probably 3 years. It's to get everything built out. And I don't know how many of you have seen, but I'm sure Matthias and others spoke about the 25 Kent project.
Yeah.
That was even more complicated because we're sitting on landfill over there, which is literally on water once you go past 12 feet. So there was a very complicated, what's called a dewatering process, which means literally pumps constantly taking out water. This is much simpler, this particular site, because we're nowhere near water. But it's still, we have to finish up our rezoning. So we're now pushing on phase 2, which is finding tenants for the existing buildings that are vacant, and phase 3, which is getting the site to finish through its rezoning, which I'm not sure if Mr. Cody, has anybody shared the renderings of a fully built building?
Which one, the 25 Kent or?
No, on Moore Street.
Yeah, Jessica.
Yes, I'll just show you now. Hold on. I'll just show you one of our renderings. Can you see that?
Yep.
So
Yes.
you can see the existing buildings on the bottom, which we're sitting in now, and then the large building on top. I'm going to tell you one little trick for those of you who like doing renderings or being involved in renderings. I learned this from Matthias. Always render at sunrise or sunset. And most people don't realize that. The first time we did renderings ourselves, I said, oh, that looks terrible. We went back to the 25 Kent. I'm like, okay, that when the sun is down, and it could be sunrise or sunset, the building sort of has a glow. So you don't want it to be either night or day. This is a little trick. You see that? You see how beautiful the building looks? And if you go online and look at the renderings of 25 Kent, you'll notice the same thing, that it's either dusk or dawn. One of those is the best time to render. Then I'll show you another image here, which we'll send out to the group as well. So you see here the footprint. We're sitting in these buildings right here. Hold on one second, let me look over. I'm sitting in this building right here. And the two existing tenants are right here. And this is where that new building is going to be built, which is essentially this. This is the rendering of the new building. And these are the two existing buildings that we're in. Hold on, just trying to figure out how to get you to see it. The ones that we're in right now are right here. These two buildings right here. So I think, let me see who's on with us. Emerick, are you on right now?
Around spring of 2019. Sun's been around since late 2018.
And so for the last really 2 years, 2019 and 2020, we've been actively doing programming. I'd like to give you kind of a little snapshot of that real quick. So I'm going to ask if I can share my screen. I think I should be able to pull that off.
Yeah, you're able to. Yeah,
let's share the present now. So I am going to share a tab, pull that up for you, and walk you through a little bit about what we've done kind of before COVID and after COVID, or during COVID. I think that's helpful. So what we really started with, as I mentioned, is, being in the Bushwick Generator, we were a home and a partner to tech hubs or hackathons, lots of different town halls. We did programming like having an artist in residence. I'm going to hopefully see that this scrolls smoothly. We had artists in residence. We have 2 current artists in residence here. We've hosted exhibitions and art galleries. We also were a state-funded Green Jobs training partner with NYSERDA and Con Edison and PSEG. So we did Green Jobs trainings, assessments. This is with Willdan, for example, and Engineers Without Borders. So we were looking at a lot of these, ways to get into sustainable building design. We hosted a Brooklyn Green Summit. We've hosted 2 now, one here at the Bushwick Generator and one at Borough Hall with Borough President Eric Adams. In the past, October 2019, we had about 150 people in with city, state, and federal leaders. This was a roundtable we had on environmental justice policy with our Congresswoman, State Senator, and Assemblywoman. So you can see there. We also did some great work over in territories. We went to Puerto Rico for a rebuild relief effort post-Hurricane Maria, trying to help the island become more green, look at community resiliency there. And, that was on Vieques with a FEMA contract helping rebuild roofs. We stayed focused on our small business community as well, hosting a holiday bazaar at the Bushwick Generator. We've also hosted minority business roundtables with the Carib Business Network and women's entrepreneurship forums. And we're very focused on, obviously, our whole multi-generational approach. So NYCHA resident approached us and said, I want to do a gaming night. And we've held, I want to say 2, maybe 3 now. We did resume in late COVID, but September of last year. But we hosted gaming nights, gaming havens with tabletop games, esports. We set up, Smash Brothers and had a lot of fun with, team of all ages. Lots of good people coming in. We also partnered well with all of the universities. And of course, Pratt came in and helped us out doing some design charrettes and placemaking. Not only looking at typologies here in the Bushwick Generator, but looking at other areas in the community like the historic La Marqueta de Williamsburg, the Moore Street Market. And then, of course, what happened. So what did we do? Everyone uses the word pivot. We genuinely believed it was already a part of our mission to think through community resiliency and think through what do we do as a partner to the community? How do we respond to immediate needs? And while we need jobs, green jobs wasn't at the forefront, say, April of 2020. So late March 2020, we partnered with World Central Kitchen, and we immediately moved into food relief. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but I'm hopeful that, in this case, maybe you guys will get 1 million feels. This is a quick kind of snapshot or vignette of what our COVID relief food efforts look like. So I'd like to share that with you. It's real short. Check your audio. Here we go.
My people, la familia. See, never be hungry out here. I know that I told them that there were going to be meals that are delivered to families or organizations. But let's go inside and let's find out what's going on. I'm working with the NYPD for something we appreciate what you guys are doing. Very much appreciated throughout the communities, and you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you so much.
And we're very grateful.
So, I'm Diego. I'm working with Moskovits outside United in Brooklyn, New York. We've got a lot of from you guys that sent petitions for huge help. But really, yesterday, we gave us tenants, family got their own, pack meal, and that's the last few days, and that's definitely helped to us in our organization because we've got a lot of just to give food to our clients who are patrons, but also to our tenants. The last week, hopefully. help make this situation easier.
Thank you guys. I'm gonna support you. Thank you very much. Very appreciated. Thank you to everything and to all the first responders and all the medical people that are helping us out. Thank you. You said.
So I think, I always get moved by that. I always think, what did you do in the Depression? What could you have done? And we tried to answer that with history on our side. We thought, how are we really going to respond as a united neighborhood? How are we going to come together? And food relief, so many organizations stepped up. We were not a food pantry by, initial role, but over the last, 9 to 10 months, we've absolutely entered into food, providing to many of the established North Brooklyn non-for-profits partnerships with Riceboro, St. Nick's, Los Sordos, El Puente. We brought the 9/11 Day Foundation to Bushwick houses for 3,000 meals on 9/11 Day. And we continue to do food relief with partners like FarmLink, providing 22 tons of potatoes moved in 2 days out of the first floor of the Bushwick generator. So we were very fortunate to have a great developer partner help us not only have that, it gave us some really powerful impact to the community. And I like to, give people data and charts and bullet points because that helps drive the conversation. Quickly here, you can see over the course of the pandemic, we've done 205,000 prepared meals. I won't read a PowerPoint, they're not a crutch, but you can see here for me that we have done a lot in just tons of food, done a lot in tons of volunteer masks for our volunteers at home. We've provided all of the PPE and masks to the volunteers coming in. This has helped us feed over 40,000 households throughout North Brooklyn, Queens. We went as far as Red Hook down in South Brooklyn. We went to the Bronx a few times. And this also means that we were doing something I think unique to food pantries. We were not capturing any contact information. We were known in the community as a trusted place for our undocumented families. We were able to help displaced workers who lost their jobs at their restaurants or bars. So we were really focused on if you weren't qualified, it didn't matter. We just needed to get you food. So there was no means testing, as they call it. This allowed us to move $3.5 million out of the Bushwick generator during the course of the pandemic. We received a little bit of private foundation funding, but like I said, we were not built to be a campaign against hunger or a United Way. And as such, we only received $10,000 in government funding throughout the entirety of last year, despite the impact. Fortunately, corporate foundation dollars, private money helped, and of course, amazing volunteers. We garnered during a pandemic 140 volunteers in just 2020 alone, providing 13,000 hours of impact and community service. The government likes to calculate a volunteer's time at $25 an hour. And in that regard, that brought in at least $325,000 worth of economic impact. We share in the sentiment of the founder of the World Central Kitchen that food is a national security issue. We share that sentiment with Chef Jose Andres, and we were proud to be a partner to them. Of course, we use our money well. Like I said, we received $10,000 of civic impact funding. This allowed us to do a volunteer recruitment campaign. And for us, it was a much needed shot in the arm as we transitioned from World Central Kitchen to a farmer's market and sort of weekly food distribution with volunteers. It allowed us to do a lot in a very short amount of time. And again, this is what we need to do. You can't do any of this without volunteers, and we do a really robust volunteer appreciation approach. We held a socially distanced volunteer barbecue with no more than 25 people in late June. That allowed us to, say thank you, have a little nosh, have a little food, and of course, it builds a really strong volunteer team. We take volunteers from all walks of life. We've had volunteers, doctors, we've had, nurses and medical. We work very closely with our NYCHA residents and neighbors. We work very closely with the resident associations. We would not be able to achieve that without. People always ask me then, okay, great, you moved into food. What are you guys going to do next? Real quick, we're working on urban resiliency. I've talked to your teachers and faculty related to how we may be able to get your team to help in the design of urban farms at NYCHA properties. We continue to give out food. We're working on 6 major food reliefs. We're calling them Super Saturdays starting in March throughout the next 3-4 months because this isn't ending. We've also done some out-of-the-box, what we like to call virtual art workshops, helping people come in and work with our artists and residents. And of course, we're still working core to our mission to improve the built environment, working with area business improvement districts, clients like our neighbor across the street, Wonton Food, to look at indoor air quality, renewables, solar roofs, and local law compliance. And, moving through it, we've done a lot of socially distanced programs, including Saving Halloween. We did a costume crawl for all. And we've also just recently done our North Brooklyn Holiday Relief Coalition. You can check that out on our IG. We were able to feed 6,000 to 7,000 people a Christmas meal on December 22nd. So again, it's just been a really challenging year, but a year of, I'm going to stop sharing, a year for us that we had to move to community good. And with Toby Moskovits and Heritage Equity Partners, amazing work from guys like Emerick Patterson, who has been a just absolute ally in the fight. I think that we've done a very big impact in a short amount of time, and we've got a lot of work still to do. We look forward to working with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. You're on mute, Toby. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, before I add something, I want to see, does anybody have any questions for Jay?
I do.
His work, yeah.
Would you have an idea about expanding to other parts of Brooklyn besides North Brooklyn, like South Brooklyn, or maybe like even parts of Queens, North Queens?
We were built on a chapter-driven model in 2019 to go to Westchester, Albany, Philadelphia, Atlanta, the Galapagos Islands, Puerto Rico.
You didn't answer the question. We only care about the neighborhood that were just asked about.
My point is, yes, we were built for
about Queens, South Brooklyn.
Yes.
Oh, God.
We were built for expansion, and we absolutely want to bring sustainable, united neighborhoods to any community that desires one. So thank you for that question.
Okay, but that was really great. You guys are spreading around the whole country, too. I just want to say that. Put you on the spot.
No, thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, what I wanted to add is that, Jay really, and he was brought to the building and did a lot of work with Emerick over the last year and a half. He's really helped us pioneer a very unique relationship between a real estate owner, a community, and a nonprofit. He's been approached by so we brought the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce to the table, and we're likely going to turn this into a permanent location that taps into everything that Jay has done on green jobs, which are critical, and also some other work Emerick's going to tell you about for other kinds of accessible, high-growth jobs. That's a permanent location in the community. And Jay's also been approached by the Queens Chamber of Commerce. So we really view the generator both as a piece of real estate, as a programming, and ultimately as a community resource, something that could be modeled and replicated around the city, so that there's that connection between the community, between people who live in the community, and others, both for job opportunities in companies that are tenants in the buildings, and also bringing in resources when it's a moment of crisis. Jay pivoted. I love how you described the pivot. It's not a change in mission. What was the exact language? Just a change in tactics.
Right.
But, then it started with job training, but then people didn't have jobs and didn't have food. And it was our privilege to bring World Central Kitchen to North Brooklyn. And when that money and that food stopped, to bring in other farmers markets and other programming. So I think the idea of a space and a permanent space in buildings that are giving back to the community and engaging with the community is something that's very pioneering. And we're going to continue to push forth on this. And also Jay is being asked to work with others throughout New York. So that was a really great question. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, Gilbert Bueno has his hand raised.
Okay.
Thank you, Maggie.
Hi. I was wondering, how active was the community in the decision making and participating for the events of the past, as well as the food distribution?
That's a great question. Our board is a diverse board. I'm a half Cuban, and I've been in New York for 10 years now, but our board consists of Asians, Latinos, African Americans are on our advisory council. So in that regard, we are not tokenists. We believe in actual and authentic. And in that, resident associations were hand in glove on every step of the way in terms of setting up the delivery days, partnering to us on how did the food get moved through different resident associations and to which buildings on what days, how many. In terms of other programming and directions we go, business improvement districts, both in Bed-Stuy and here at the Graham Avenue bit, for example, we're heavily involved in planning for, say, Halloween, and how are we going to do that safe and socially distanced. Further, we worked with BIDS to do culturally competent programming, like hosting the 2 parandas that occurred on the Avenue of Puerto Rico in December. So for us, and I'll give you another really great example real quick. A community choir from a young lady from Boricuan Plaza said, I want to start a community choir. I had actually wanted to start a community choir in April. And so she came to us after working with us as a volunteer throughout the food relief and said, guys, can we do this? And I was like, great, let's fire it up. Let's get together. We started auditioning in late November. We had the community choir caroling on the Graham Ave bid and doing events at Bushwick Houses by mid-December. It's now 8 people strong. If you like to sing, we'll put you in touch with our choir director. And that's a great example of, in my book, someone coming to us with an idea and us not creating barriers to enter, but actually doing our best to open up the doors and allowing as many people as possible to use this neighborhood lab.
And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this opportunity to transition to Emerick, because Emerick can also address the part of your question that asked more broadly about community engagement and everything we're doing in the building and planning. And one of the things he'll speak with you about are a range of, I'll use a word maybe some of you haven't heard, charrettes, that deal with planning and engagement as part of it. So Emerick, I'm going to hand it off to you to introduce yourself. And you can, part of your overview is give a little more depth around the meaning of a hackathon, which is a word that I used when I was giving my tour. And one of the students asked me to explain it, and I said, my explanation is not going to be half as good as yours. So we're going to hand the floor over to Emerick Patterson, who's an entrepreneur in residence at Heritage Equity Partners. He's not here physically right now because he's been working remotely, like many people. We hope to have him back very soon because we miss him. And he'll tell you more about his work over the last couple of years and his background. Go right ahead, Emerick.
Thank you. All right. Nice to meet everyone. I think this is the 3rd or 4th class of Mr. Codio's that I've met. It's a pleasure. So I'll just follow up on what Jay has said and also give a quick background about myself. So I realized I wanted to be in real estate development pretty early in life. Nobody told me how to do it. So I ended up trying to get a degree in engineering and construction engineering. I found out that wasn't the way. So eventually I made my way to graduate school and I did a master's in real estate development from Columbia University. And then afterwards I went to work with Toby at Heritage Equity Partners, which if you
Hold on, Emerick, you need to tell everyone, if you don't mind, how you got the job. That is a great story about pluckiness and tenacity. If you don't mind sharing that.
Sure. So I met, Toby was speaking at a conference and I met one of her associates at that time who brought me to meet with her directly. From my point of view, I just hung around until Toby gives me a job. I mean, I think that's one of the...
No, hold on. He's being very modest. Let me give you a life lesson, okay? So Emerick heard me speak at a conference and he wanted to meet me. So first he hustled and he figured out who at this conference knew me, and happens to be one of my employees was there. And then he said to her, where does Toby hang out? And she's like, well, eventually she ends up at the Williamsburg Hotel. And he waited for me for 4 or 5 hours. Is that right, Emerick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something like that. Until I showed up. And then the people at the hotel said, you don't understand. This guy has been waiting for you for hours. You need to meet him. And I was very impressed. Obviously, Emerick is brilliant at what he does, but sometimes you just got to push that extra push. And lo and behold, he created the job that he has today, which I said, usually, I loved his energy and his vision. And the job that he does and the work that he's done, which has evolved over time, he's going to share with you more now.
Yep, certainly. So that is correct. And, it does take tenacity and persistence to get a job. But I knew that Toby was the type of profile of developer that I wanted to work with. She's somebody who pushes the envelope. And, frankly, real estate development can be boring unless you're working with somebody like this. And with this, I thought that we could really transform a neighborhood and industry and so forth. So I went to work with Toby. Just a little bit of background. My father actually worked for the state of North Carolina. And he, his claim to fame was really setting up health community facilities in North Carolina in places that couldn't get access to healthcare. So I realized, over the past couple of months when looking back at the work that we've done at the generator, to some degree, this is what my father did, was set up essentially a network of community facilities. And at the generator, we basically reinvented the community center. And the reason this is so important at a place like the generator is that East Williamsburg is an area that is not yet really developed, is not transformed. If you look back at all the manufacturing districts, Soho was once a manufacturing district. Tribeca was once a manufacturing district. And now they're residences. There's retail. So to some degree, East Williamsburg was underdeveloped, and it's a very great place to set the precedent for what great development should look like. So what we did is we took a 5,000 square foot space in the generator, and we started to activate community. Now that's a pretty complex subject, but somebody asked the question around what are you doing around participation and engagement. I mean, the idea of working in a neighborhood like this is that you can activate community in new ways. I mean, there's nothing to do in Manhattan, right? Because nobody lives in Manhattan. But here, we're steps away from a NYCHA property. A lot of people live in Bushwick, Ridgewood, Brownsville. All they can access East Williamsburg by the L train. So we said, what does a real estate development look like where there's been proper participation and engagement, very early in the process. And that's what we did at the generator, and that's what we used the 5,000 square foot space for. So in this space, we did a number of events, but the idea was to, Jay told you about all the stuff that needs to be done in a neighborhood, really needs to be done. Delivering food, making sure that there's people have access to education, to the basic opportunities and metrics for quality of life. What I did was try to bring an innovative component to it and bring technology into the equation so it was exciting, because all the work that Jay can tell you, the work that he does is not necessarily sexy, right? I mean, it's not like looking at TikTok, it's the opposite of that, but it's completely necessary. So we tried to take what Jay does and what I do, which is bring in kind of the innovative, creative component and mix that all into one space so that everybody would be interested in showing up at the generator. So that's really what we did. And when Toby says hackathons is really, it means having a bunch of people, for a weekend hacking on a problem. And usually they use programming or computer code to solve a problem, but there's other ways, sometimes people create new businesses. So hackathons were one way that we got people to come together at the generator to create. So really a lot of it has been about what can we create, what do people want to create, and how can we leverage this space and this community to do just that. Does that make sense? Are there any questions? Toby, is there anything that I missed that you would like me to cover?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, especially because of everybody's interest in architecture and design, to talk a little bit about some of the sessions we did with Pratt. Mm-hmm. And actually, Jay upstairs can go walk over to the board and show them the model of the neighborhood. And just to talk through over the last couple of years, all the things that we've done that to do what I would call participatory planning, so that it wasn't, by the time we filed for our ULURP, it wasn't something new. Everybody's been in the building, and many have participated in the conversation on what the space should look like. Yeah. And then after that, I want you to talk about one or two examples of hackathons that we've hosted with students. I think it'll help them really understand that.
Sure.
Yeah, we can tandem this. Go ahead, Emerick.
Yeah, so we brought Pratt in to do a couple of sessions. I mean, the problem with real estate development...
Just explain, but Jay is showing a model that... explain what that is first, yeah.
This is a model that the students at Pratt created of the neighborhood, and you can see the building in red is the generator. So basically what this did was allow us to host a number of sessions with political leaders, with residents from the neighborhood, to get them to understand this real estate development in the context of the neighborhood. This is very important in a fundamental shift in real estate development and city planning, because this is typically something that is done by city planning. City planning has a budget, it's limited, and they work with the city council or they work with a nonprofit activist group to host these kind of sessions that bring in residents to give comments on plans for the neighborhood. So this is a kind of departure from that system in a bit of a transformation where this is a private developer who has an interest in growing local participation and engagement around what the future of Bushwick should look like and what this development should look like. Again, I can't overstate the importance of this, and this is it's transformational because deciding what you want in your neighborhood is a tremendous piece of equity, right? Having a say in the future of where you live, work, and play is a very big deal. It's worth dollars, a lot of them. And so, we wanted to create an environment where we could host a number of sessions and we could facilitate as much participation and engagement as possible around urban planning without having the city planning as an intermediary because they have their own, agenda as well. So we really wanted to facilitate a direct one-to-one conversation with residents, with businesses, with community leaders, with stakeholders, to try to facilitate and usher in a new era of direct participation and engagement around urban planning, with Bushwick and East Williamsburg being the prototype for that. And to the point about, can this spread to other neighborhoods? Absolutely. This is a model where that can absolutely be taken. I ran one session, and I can send, if you want, to Mr. Codio a report that I did, a retrospective on the session. I used a technology that uses artificial intelligence and so forth. And I ran a town hall asking people in the neighborhood what they wanted in this development, literally what they wanted to see. And 60 people sat in the room, and we asked them different questions, and the AI, the artificial intelligence, brought together their answers. And over the course of 2 hours, it was shown that the community that was brought in on that day really wanted to see a makerspace in the generator. Now, whether a makerspace happens or not, that's going to be up to what some market factors. But this is kind of the participation engagement that we're trying to usher in, and the more that we can do, the better.
Another point or signature program I would piggyback on is our urban farms. We did all this food relief, and what we heard from our residents, both volunteers and recipients, was, sure, you're giving us, the mantra, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime. And from that, the residents basically clamored for, please find us ways to build genuine community resiliency. And so for us, that was urban farming. So downstairs, we set up a hydroponics demonstration garden to show how quickly and easily you could do vertical gardening in some of the lobbies of NYCHA properties. We began to have robust conversations with NYCHA resident associations. We ended up with 2 project charters at Bushwick Houses and Glenmore Plaza in East New York to be able to bring urban farms to their 1 to 2 acre lots. There's already 6 urban farms throughout the city. What we wanted to do is basically elevate our resident neighbors, our neighbors' needs and desires, and get city stakeholders to say, we want the yes. So the urban farm process right now, we garnered 500 petitions during the pandemic socially distanced events last summer. We created a signature kind of campaign with letters of support from area businesses. We have over 20 businesses in support. We got city, state, and federal support from it. We have the Assemblywoman signed on to the project charter, for example. We've briefed 3 city council members in support of it. And we've also talked to the borough president about this advancement of the idea of a Department of Urban Agriculture, which is current legislation sitting before the New York City Council Speaker's Office. So this, for us, was taking what we heard from our residents, going beyond just giving folks a box of food, and let's find sustainable, resilient ways to create food access. And at a NYCHA resident of 3,000 residents at Bushwick Houses, 1 to 2 acres in done right with volunteers and community partner organizations, we believe we can actually feed that many people. They're doing it in Milwaukee on 10,000 people fed on 3 acres annually. So it's doable, it's possible. And that's an example, again, of us listening to our community neighbors, our partners and friends, and saying, what can we do? How can we be better? And it's thriving out of a space like the generator.
I just noticed a question or hand raised. Mr. Cody, if somebody wants to just either unmute or allow, yeah.
Myra Gomez, she put a question in the chat. Myra, if you could unmute.
Hi. So I was wondering if while working at the Bushwick generator, have you guys had any projects that have had a personal meaning to any of you?
Food. I was a kid. I'm childhood poverty. I used to get food bank food for Christmas. I used to get Cap'n Crunch berries on Christmas Day from my family of 7. So when we got to actually feed people genuinely, 1,500 turkeys, hams, and chickens on Christmas week, for me, our food relief efforts have touched home and fully connected me to both my personal story and my professional art. So for us, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food access.
So, I'll add that, I have 3 kids. My youngest is 15 and my oldest is 20. And I myself gained a lot from mentors. And it's been very meaningful to see the work that Emerick really has pioneered. We've had probably over 1,000 kids through the building over the years participating in the hackathons and other programming. And giving them a chance to get exposed to ideas. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. My dad came here when he was 3 years old, and I always believe that after food, the next thing that we all need is to feed our soul with a feeling of accomplishment, and that it's possible not just to find a job, but to really find a calling and something you're passionate about. And that's really what we're looking to do here, to create a space where people from different backgrounds, from different worlds, from different cultures connect with each other and find what they're passionate about, whether it's art, which Jay's spoken about, or it's problem solving. And even within our hackathon groups, not everybody's going to be a computer programmer. There are other elements. There's design. There's construction and architecture. So that's been a very meaningful part of this journey. And after we give Emerick a chance to answer this question, I wanted to also touch on a little more on the upcoming, more formal job training programs that we're running, maybe to talk a little bit about, how we met our friends at Google, Emerick, and what we're looking to do in the next couple months in terms of some formal job training programs to help the community. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, everything about this project is is personal to me. I mean, it represents good development, and that is a huge step for neighborhoods everywhere, to being frankly more authentic, in my opinion, much more interesting. Bushwick is Bushwick because of the history, because it's interesting. So, like Toby, I'm sure knows this, but I never told her directly. I probably have had 2,000 kids tour the Bushwick generator construction site, that was completely illegal, just to give them the opportunity to see what this development looks like before it's created and conceptualized and completed by, not them, right? And just to see people's eyes light up and to think what this development could do for them is a very big deal. So I've taken countless tours, and I think that's the most personal and interesting part for me.
So if you don't mind, Emerick, maybe let's end our presentation by just sharing a little bit more about our plan with, hopefully with the chamber for a more formal job training program, and then we could open the floor to questions for anybody that wants to ask us either about the building, about Emerick's work here with the community, and about Jay and Sustainable United Neighborhoods.
Sorry, job. You want me to talk about the job?
Just explain. Tell the brief story of how you met Benjamin Royce, what we were trying to solve, and how the building and what you've created helped us come to a solution to a problem that other people are paying very close attention to. Yeah. How to create accessible tech jobs if you're not going to be a programmer.
Yeah, sounds good. So Ben Royce was a mentor. So Brooklyn Technical High School did a hackathon at the building, and they brought in all of these sponsors, and I helped them do the hackathon at the generator. And again, the hackathon is just where all the kids, all the young adults came to basically work on different problems. Most of them were learning how to code, or make a game, for instance, or design some sort of app. And most people didn't have they had no prior experience of doing so. But Ben Royce was working at Google, and he was one of the mentors of that program, and I gave him a tour of the building. And we talked about what Google could potentially do at the building for the residents of East Williamsburg, Bushwick, and the greater North Brooklyn area. It's important to know that that mobility, economic mobility, the ability to get a job in the tech industry is, or a tech-related industry, or just an industry that pays you well enough to feed your family, to pay your bills, to live comfortably, is not easy. It's not easy for anybody. And it's especially not easy for those people who are not getting in front of those opportunities, at an early age. So we talked about with Ben how we could create kind of a catalyst for residents of North Brooklyn to come in and get the support that they need to get a job in a field that's closer to the technology, the wages that technology offers. So with that, we met with Toby, and together we put together a plan for an economic development program around job training and readiness into the tech industry. Maybe I think Jay or Toby could speak more on that.
Yeah, I actually, the main point of the story is what Emerick already described to you, which I hope helps you understand the spirit of what we've built and we've successfully achieved, and we plan to do more of it. It's these random interactions. It's taking an engineer who works at Google and lived in downtown Brooklyn and wouldn't even come to Bushwick. Having him come here, I think it was actually a Microsoft-sponsored event, learn what we were doing, get so engaged that we made him crazy. We met with him many, many times, picking his brain, thinking through this issue as to, I always like to say, if the only job available was being a computer programmer, I'd be unemployed. I'm not good at that. I force myself to study things like math and science, not what I love to do. How do we create accessible jobs? And he educated us about the concept of data analytics and data presentation. And really, we used that relationship that Emerick brought to the table and the space brought to the table to create what we think is going to be a very powerful partnership between, Heritage as developer, myself, Emerick, Jay and his organization, and the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, with collaboration from Google to launch a program to teach young people out of college the tools they need to get jobs, for example, working for Google doing paid search, to work for any company that analyzes data to make business decisions. And that's one of the small things that came out of this space that's open to the community, open to the neighborhood, and open to people who want to learn how to give back and how to create a real collaboration between all the various stakeholders that make us a neighborhood great, that make a borough great, and ultimately make a city great. So that was really, what I wanted to bring out. In that story. So I think we'll open it up to questions now, unless, Jay, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you both touched on it really well. Yeah, you've touched on it really well. Yeah.
Does anybody have? Yeah, go ahead.
Martina, she has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, how you doing? I actually had the chance to go to one of the tours of the site last year and the year before, and I saw many possibilities to bring the people, which is, I think, it's the important point here of this building. Do you think that having the community's opinion on how we should create this building is an option, or should we, like the people designing the building, should we think of ways to bring in the community and create it our own ways?
So I really good question. So we believe when you try to create something, no single person has all the right answers, and creativity and success comes from many different. It's Jay, myself, and Emerick. We have totally different backgrounds. We grew up in different parts of this country. We believe in different things, and look at this really powerful collaboration. What I would say is, if you're asking about our project, we obviously believe deeply, even before we had to do it.
Yeah.
Process as part of a rezoning, we did it proactively. We invited people in, we asked their opinion. Emerick used technology to engage with people. We brought in Pratt, a phenomenal architecture and design school, to pick their brain. We were very public about our intentions and our desire for feedback. I would suggest that if you're in the process with your group of designing a space, whether it be interior or exterior, that you could make your own focus group. and take 3 or 4 people, and there's some videos online. We'll send the link out. We have a YouTube channel, so we've done tours of the neighborhood and tours of the building. Emerick's going to share some materials about hackathon. We'll get you some information on Jay's work and the plans for the building, and you can make your own little think tank. And it could be your mom, it could be your cousin, it could be other students in the school who aren't part of this, and say, what do you think about this? Is makerspace important? How do you deal with using a physical space when people are worried about infections in a way in which they've never been, thinking through that before? And try to get feedback, because I think in whatever you do, it's always helpful to bounce ideas off of people. So I'd say as a project, it's very important to us, and we built the whole space. Oftentimes, developers do everything that we've done and that Emerick's led us to after they get what they want. We did it before.
Right.
Nobody asked us to do it because we deeply believe that the building is more successful, the tenants are more effective, and we're helping change the neighborhood in a way in which we want to. And that mission is achieved with that open door. So I would encourage all of you, when you choose your projects, to make your own informal group of people where you bounce ideas off of, because it's been very helpful to us in our work. And I see Jay nodding, so Jay, you're welcome to add anything more.
I was going to say, you've done it, her team has done it without what they call a community benefits agreement, a CBA. That seems to be a norm for some developments throughout not just the city, but other major urban environments in this country. It is nice to do it when you want to do it. And in this regard, being a non-for-profit partner who has not had to make the case has already been seen and agreed to, and it's baked into the project design and the project development. That makes it easy, not only for us, but for our engagement to be authentic. So, to your question about should we listen, should we absolutely engage? I don't think you can properly do a development moving forward. And those that do, you see how much challenge they have. Let's take a quick look and snapshot at Amazon. They didn't go through our normal planning and channels. They didn't go through our land use processes. And while we may have different views of whether they should be here or not, or did we need those jobs or not, what we can see is we put planning processes in place for a reason. And you have to respect that process. It helps ensure that everybody has a fair and equitable stake in our city, and without which you're going to have bad faith actors. The good news here is that we've had nothing but good faith actors. And from what I hear from the community, from what I hear from our resident associations and the other residents who come here and line up for food regularly, we see 50 to 100 people here sometimes each day when we put the tent out, and we just put, grab and go food out front whenever we receive it. They tell us that they're welcoming us, that they're happy to see that there's a developer who does believe in give back. And, just to be clear, I'm not on the payroll. We're just here to do the good with a partner like Toby and Emerick.
I'll speak to that question just very succinctly. 2 things. One, Toby is a developer that goes into an area very early and believes in an area and creates it. So when somebody comes and they say they want a makerspace at this building, not everybody's wishes and dreams are going to happen in one building, but they can happen in a neighborhood over time. What's most important is the participation and engagement itself. I started this process when Toby introduced me to the councilman and the community. Each councilman has a community organizer, and their job is to organize with the community. However, they have a limited budget. So I started this process out by interviewing the community organizers and asking them a couple questions, saying, well, how many people do you have on your email list? How many people do you reach out to? And what they told me, and this district that this property's in has probably 150, 200,000 people. And I don't know if you want to take a guess at how many people they had on their email list, but it's around 2,000 or 3,000, right? So it's very, very low. The capacity for the community organizers to reach out to their constituency and engage them in anything is very, very low. So that's where we came in. So the big asset here is the participation and engagement itself. To the degree that the project can facilitate, the dreams and wishes, the hopes for everybody in the community, that's desired as much as possible. However, it's really about what can be done in the neighborhood, to improve the quality of life of